Welcome to the SARE Ladies Podcast, where our mission is to get more people that look like us participating in the real estate industry.
Whether you're a seasoned real estate pro or just starting out, there's something for everyone here.
I'm Anita Wong.
And I'm Tiffany Lee.
We invite experts to not just talk about real estate, but also about our unique identity as Asian women and the cultural values that shape who we are as investors.
Now let's get on with the show.
Welcome back to another exciting episode of the SARE Ladies Podcast. I'm Anita Wong, your co-host, and as always, I'm joined by the wonderful Tiffany Lee. Today, we have a very special guest joining us, someone who has made significant strides in the world of private money lending.
That's right, Anita. We are thrilled to welcome Beth Pinkley Johnson to the show. Beth is a girl after my own heart because she, in addition to being a private money lending guru, is also an avid poker player who also lives part-time in Las Vegas and Seattle. Beth is the co-author of the acclaimed book, Lend to Live, Earn Hassle-Free Passive Income in Real Estate with Private Money Lending, published by BiggerPockets.com in July 2022. Her book and the Lend to Live brand have become go-to resources for anyone interested in private money lending.
In addition to her authorship, Beth co-founded Flynn Family Lending with her husband, Matt Flynn, in 2014. Their private money lending business offers creative financing solutions across Washington state, making a significant impact in the local real estate investment community.
Beth's expertise and dedication to providing educational and investment opportunities through Lend to Live have helped countless individuals navigate the world of private money lending. In poker, Beth is what you would probably call a backer. We're excited to dive into this topic and learn more about how private money loans compare to other types of investments.
So without further ado, welcome, Beth. We're so excited to have you today. Hello.
Hi, thanks for having me.
We are so excited to have you. So I had mentioned before we jump into it, Beth, that, the show's very informal. And because you're a poker player, I'm going to make this conversation kind of fun. And I'm going to with each question, I'm going to ask you hey, what do you think is a poker analogy to this concept that we're talking about in private money lending? Because I know if you and I sat down together, we could nerd out about this all day because I see so many parallels after sitting through your presentation, which was amazing. The virtual coffee that she presented to the SARE Ladies group just a little bit before this. So let's jump into it. So let's talk about what's on everyone's mind. Are you going to be playing in the WSOP main event this year, Beth?
I am not. I'm a much better private lender than I am a poker player all day, every day. In fact, I didn't even start it until I guess maybe 8 years ago, watching my husband play. And I saw him make all these bad moves. I'm so much more conservative in nature than he is. And he just, he's like an all-in kind of guy. And so I thought that in order to hang out with him in retirement, I had to learn how to play poker. So it's something that I moonlight on, but private money is where I run deep.
That's so funny. And you also, that's so interesting. Do you share hand histories with your husband now that you play? Do you guys run hands by each other? Because I know you guys are business partners, but are you also poker partners?
We are not poker partners. When he's at the table, I always I want to be to the left of him. I need to act last. And that's the same in our business. We run our private lending business together and I'm the underwriter. So I'm finding every reason to say no. In fact, if you read my book, Tiff, there's in underwriting, I quote Annie Duke in it because very much underwriting is much like the art of poker. You're never going to know what the other player's cards are until so you have to make really educated decisions with limited information. And so with my husband, we'll run some card history together, but like I said, I don't remember it. He'll come back and be like, okay, I pre-flop raised and then I shoved and then the third card, then flop this, and then, there was a 7 on the turn. I can't remember any of that. I'm usually probably listening to a business podcast, to be honest with you.
So funny. I love that. Okay. So I guess, yeah, you answered all of those questions. So you talked about in the writing. How are the mechanics of private money loans different from traditional bank loans, in your opinion? And why did you jump into it? Yeah.
It's a lot different. I chanced into this line of business. I'd always grown up in real estate. You've heard some of my other podcast appearances. I tell my origin story all the time, but I was raised on flips and rentals. That's where I spent a lot of my time in the 80s. but I didn't understand private lending. And so the nice thing about it is that it is a fairly highly unregulated industry. There's lots of ways to be really successful at it, but you need to understand what you can and cannot do from a legal perspective in order to make sure that you're doing it safely. But what I like about it is that it's passive. And I like that I can call my own terms, and there's just really a need and a space for it because investors need creative financing. Banks and Wall Street capital, they're not looking for creativity. They're looking for safety, and they just want to sell loan tapes and create an interest spread on it. And so it's just going to be a lot more constrictive in how you can get deals funded. So I think private lending is fantastic because it carves out a niche in financing that's just not available by financial institutions out there.
So wait, all right. So not to make this go back to poker, but totally to make this go back to poker. Beth, so you mentioned you're a cash player. Have you ever played poker tournaments before? Have you partook?
Yeah, I have. I mean, it's a much different play, as you know. So my husband, when we first started coming down here, I used to do a lot of like little turbo events at like Ballet's, now Horseshoe, where they were just, 30 to 40 participants or entrants. And that's all my mind has time for. Like I said, I'm a small business owner. We've been doing this for 10 years. I'm the operations side of the house. I'm definitely the integrator. My husband's the visionary. So he's always looking for that next, dopamine rush. And he gets that at the poker tables. He gets that when he helps find new loans and acquire new properties. But I'm the one that has to stabilize everything. So my mind can't run deep at the poker table. I'm constantly thinking about how can I improve our business? How can I safeguard my client's capital? Do I have enough borrower deal flow? How do I deploy this capital quickly so I don't lose this, passive investors' capital and they go invest it somewhere else? That's where my mind is. So long-term tournament play, I get too squirrely. I can't do it, but he could do it all day, every day. In fact, he does quite a bit of it.
That's so funny because I was just going to say the way you explain the mechanics between private money loans and how it moves and how you approach it and how it's different from traditional bank loans. I almost feel like private money lending is very much tournament poker strategy and traditional bank loans is, conservative cash game strategy where you don't have, the antes forcing you to play going up every level. It's but you kind of have to you have to get more creative with tournament play. But with cash games, you can play the same thing over and over again. Just play tight as right. And, you'll make consistent money and you're not opening yourself up to, big swings. So that's
I completely agree. I mean, with poker, everything that's in front of you on the table, all your chips, that is all at play. That is all at risk. What I like about private lending, and that's the difference between truly gambling and investing passively in private money or in real estate, is I'm looking for preservation of capital and I'm just looking for, income. I'm not willing to put it all on the line, so to speak. I need to temper that risk by having really large equity buffer protection to safeguard me if that, because there are two outers that happen, right? That's the market fluctuation that borrowers can't avoid. To the best of their intentions, lots of experience, borrowers can still get hit by adversity like that, same with poker players. But I'd much rather hedge my bets and risk in the private lending world than in poker.
Well, you know what? You kind of are because you're exercising bankroll management for your investors because you're diversifying it everywhere. So if one doesn't work out, it's only such a small portion. It's just one bad session over like a long term of like good winning plays. So
absolutely.
Yeah. That actually is a great segue to something you said on the SARE Ladies virtual coffee chat a little bit ago, which was everyone is going to lose money eventually, but how they handle those setbacks speaks a lot about their character. And that really separates the okay poker players from the ones that stay around for a really long time and are long-term winners. So what, in that vein, like what qualities have you seen in people that show that they are probably, a good person to align with as far as long-term investments?
Well, I think that they're very transparent about what they do and where they fell down. I mean, I can't tell you on the flip side of the bad side of it is I see them constantly laying blame on why they weren't successful. They don't really take ownership or accountability for their part in that. And I think that's what sets good borrowers from bad borrowers. in that if you're accepting the accountability for a sub walking off or a mechanic lien landing on your project, or that it took twice as long, you didn't really understand the permitting process or didn't have enough time available to navigate it, at least being transparent about that sets you apart. I've been fortunate to not lose too much money in real estate. For me, it's mostly been like legal battles trying to get someone, sue for specific performance. That's a whole nother sidebar conversation, but you learn quickly what not to do and you take accountability for that, right? And so that's what I'm typically looking for as a private lender.
Love that. All right, Anita, I'll
Yeah,
let you
I love
say
that there's so much of the qualitative assessment that is needed, and it makes so much sense because you're kind of investing in a relationship with someone on a long-term side. And I really love that. I think you talked about empathy, and when you are sort of courting someone to give you money, you don't just go in straight in with the numbers. You need to kind of get to know each other a little bit first, and how you would be able to work with each other. Like, who are you? Like, what's your why? Right. And I love that so much in your past presentation. So to talk a little bit more about like today's trends, I wanted to see what you thought, what trends do you see in demand for PMLs, and what factors do you see are driving those demands this year?
Well, really, it's a lot of it has to do with the cost of capital. I mean, things aren't cheap anymore. Borrowing capital is not as cheap as it used to be. Long gone are the days of getting, a 3 to 4% interest. People used to complain a bitch about it being at like 5 or 5.5 or whatever in DSCR loans, but now things are so much more expensive. So the demand for private lending is much greater than it ever has been. As I mentioned on a virtual coffee, there's always going to be a place for private lending. It's very perennial. In an up market, you need private lenders who can act quickly and creatively. In a down economy, when rates are up, transactions are slim, you're going to need private lending to help you get across the finish line. And we've seen that, all these blogs and podcasts and talks about creative financing. Well, private lending is absolutely a part of that mix. How do I acquire more for my portfolio with less money out of pocket? You cannot do that with traditional financing sources, pure and simple. So you're going to need to understand how to navigate private lending and, fold that into your creative financing strategy, whether that's through seller financing, which is truly private money lending at its finest, or through gap financing or second lien positions to tap into trapped equity. Private lending right now is just so much more important than it ever has been, when things were super easy to acquire, cheap to acquire, and easy to make a spread on because of appreciation. Those things don't necessarily exist in all markets today.
And, this year is particularly interesting because we are in an election year, and, there's been speculation that there's going to be one more drop before September, likely because September, because right now they're getting a lot of pressure from both sides of the parties, right? So, and after September, if they do any more interest rate drops, then they're going to see it as election interfering. So I'd love to hear about what you're going to be seeing this particular year for or general for election years.
To be honest, I'm a little skittish. Even if they say that there's going to be another rate drop between now and elections, all I have to go back on is, history. As Dr. Phil says, past behavior is a predictor of future behavior. Well, 2018, there was a lot of flippers that got stuck. At least in my market up here in Washington, there was a slight rate adjustment in July, and then I started seeing hard money lenders shutter temporarily, but there was a constriction in lender capacity at that time. And then people who found themselves in 2, 3, 4 projects, they could not get them sold pre-election. It was just a midterm, right? But then all of a sudden, I saw the days on market increase post-election because Thanksgiving was coming up. Then it was Christmas. Then, unfortunately, here after the first of the year, we had 2 snowstorms in Seattle. People who were reliant on selling their projects in that fourth quarter of 2018 found themselves unable to offload those properties until April or May of the following year. So I'm anticipating that kind of happening again. If it doesn't, wonderful. If it does, I'm prepared with a large equity buffer to protect. And I'm making sure that borrowers take that in consideration too, because the high costs of hard money and those monthly carrying costs can eat away your entire margin. And I saw a lot of flippers that were volume flipping dozens of properties a year. They stopped after 2019. They took a loss. That happened a couple of years ago in 2022 too, where people were having to come to close with cash just to sell their flips. And I'm anticipating that happening again.
So I guess that kind of goes into risk, really, which is my next question. So how should people really hedge their bets, and what should people look out for right now, or how to mitigate those risks?
I just say be conservative, right? I think that, and again, going back to the qualitative aspects of a borrower and how they present their deal, how they present themselves, that absolutely is something that I'm looking for. Even if they provide me with a pro forma with comps substantiating, a really significant ARV, and I go and I do my own due diligence on it, and I see that they've overshot that. I can't find anything that's really relevant, like true comps. What they gave me maybe was 2 years old, where rates were at a completely different environment. Then I'm not going to take that. Not only am I not going to take that, but I'm going to say, I'm now losing a little bit of confidence in you as an investor to really show me that you're taking a conservative approach and having a plan B and a plan C. That's what I'm going to want to see from them as a private lender, is a conservative nature to say that they're taking these into consideration. And we didn't see a whole lot of that 5, 6, 7 years ago. Anybody who wasn't investing prior to 2008, very, very optimistic, right? Appreciation saved a lot of really novice investors. And so they use that as fuel to substantiate these over embellished comps. And I kind of see right through that, because I did have real estate in 2008. It did suck, and I don't want to be there again. And I don't want my borrowers to be there either.
Okay. Well, I love that. And, I think that I feel like I've just learned so much on private money lending and stuff, because we already kind of came from this hour-long episode. I'm like, and it's like, I'm just ready to take action.
It's like we took the 101 class, and this is like the office hours with the professor.
I'm still digesting the 101, to be quite frankly with you.
I think this is one of my more favorite subjects that we haven't touched yet on SARE Ladies, that really I think I would love to have you back, Beth, to just do a deeper dive. Like this could be a whole series. Like, I know that you had mentioned that you guys invest in real estate, but are there other asset classes that you guys loan against? Because I know do you invest in businesses? Because I remember you had mentioned your first ever private money lending experience was in the cannabis industry. So I think this is kind of a side conversation, but I just remember that was an interesting thing that you said an hour ago. So, and we have some time still left in the podcast. So why don't you expand on that? Because I think that's such a colorful story.
Yeah, we do. So my first loan was against in Washington, it's called 502 business, but it's a cannabis business. There's a legal marijuana grow facility, hydroponic. So it was very cool to take tours of this place. But it was just a junky little industrial building on the outskirts of downtown Seattle. Cannabis loans are very hard to come by. Cannabis businesses are very high cash, high capital, but very difficult to finance. So of course, I'm always going to want to lend against real estate, but I can lend to businesses. I may take a UCC lien against the business. In this case, I didn't, because it was legal marijuana that comes with its own host of issues. Probably wouldn't recommend it for a novice investor. But yes, we do lend on other asset classes. We've done industrial, we've done commercial. I prefer like mixed use buildings because it combines, triple net tenants with a residential component as well. It's a little bit more stabilized. And we'll do mobile home parks. Mobile home parks are traditionally very difficult to get financed into long-term debt with banks or other financial institutions. And when they do it, it's on a pretty low loan to value. I usually see them at like 55% loan to value or better. And that means there's a ton of equity. And these mobile home parks, they generally cash flow very well. So they're able to debt service, but there's this trapped equity that they can't tap into. And so that's where I might come in a second lien position behind. But a lot of our loans are generally single family 1 to 4 unit. But we like to diversify it so that we're not just stuck heavy in any single one asset class.
That is so cool. This is a follow-up offline conversation we will have, Beth, when I see you in Vegas in a few weeks.
Well, I just think that was a perfect time to talk about private lending, and it never is talked about. And the thing is that I think we're kind of done with sexy headlines. Everyone was talking for like the last 12, 15 years about, I mean, it was, what is the real estate strategy du jour? You know, storage units, short-term rentals, midterm rentals, house hacking. Like, can we keep hearing every couple of years they're just recycling this, but nobody talks about private lending? Why? It's not sexy.
I think it's sexy.
Sure. Well, I mean, if you think passive income, getting like double-digit returns with safe, security and safety and real estate is sexy, sure. But I wasn't splashing headlines saying, "Oh, I made 6 figures on one single flip. How I got to 1,000 doors in 2 years," and and how I earned 25% IRR on my syndication. Those are great, but those are the 1%ers, right? Private lending needs to be talked about more, because you're not going to see any sexy headlines from me making giant, enormous returns, but it's also not speculative. I get to choose what I lend on. I can lend on assets values. It's very safe. So you won't hear me, headlines saying that I'm shutting my doors down either. Mm-hmm. So I do think it needs to be talked about, because it's a very passive source of income, particularly for established real estate investors who maybe don't want to deal with being a landlord anymore, or you're like me where you've capped out your number of doors. Like, I don't need triple digit doors. I have a nice small collection of well-performing small multifamily that my husband and I manage together with private or property managers, but I don't want to add more. I don't need more complications. So what do I do with this accumulation of wealth? Let's just lend it out and live a good life. Right? Let's buy a property here like I do in Vegas and have a second home that might not be cash flowing, but brings me infinite amounts of joy. I'm looking for more, peace. I'm looking for, having some more joy over those profits and safety. That's what I'm looking for now. I'm pushing 50. I'll be 50 next year.
Oh, wow. You look great.
Yeah, thanks.
What's so funny is everything you just said, like, you don't want to make those big real estate gambles anymore. Like, you don't want to deal with the headache of the swings and the day-to-day management and headaches that come with being a landlord. It's almost like you and your husband put your heads together and you're like, you know what? Instead of all this, why don't we just be the house? You guys basically form your own casino, and everyone knows that the house always wins. So and because the house also sets the odds and the terms, and that's where the creativity comes in. Like, anyone who participates, you're always making money. Your deal, like, when you're at a casino, every deal, you could be a poker player. You only win if you win a pot, but every deal, the casino makes money because they're taking a percentage. They don't care who wins. They're just like, as long as they're getting paid back, they're extracting, which is why I think it's sexy, because I see like the parallels of where you're constantly making money. And I think, what's also cool is you're still ancillary to the real estate stuff. So the guys doing the sexy things, they're still going to need you. At the end of the day, you get to participate behind the scenes and all of those things when their stuff goes south, or if they just need help getting it started, which is why I think it's cool. And I think it's my favorite topic to talk about. And I'm very excited to nerd out. Anita, are you ready to move into our fire questions?
All right. So Beth, we're going to fire a couple questions at you. And so just whatever comes to mind first. All right. So what is one thing a mentor or family member taught you that still resonates with you today?
Well, I think it's that real estate generates wealth, right? My parents, like I said, I grew up on flips. Mom never told me to just go get a job and climb the corporate ladder and live the good life. She's just like, work hard, play later, work hard, invest the money that you make, make more money. And of course, I'm embedded in a real estate business now, both in private lending and owning real estate myself, this was something that was always embedded upon me as a kid. Never thought I'd be running a private lending business from it. I thought it was always going to be a side hustle, but absolutely I would not be where I am today if it wasn't for my parents teaching me those life lessons. So.
Okay, and next, well, I'm gonna ask my own rapid question, but what is the biggest lie in real estate?
There's so many, I don't know.
There's so many lies, people.
It's not lies. How about we just say like a misrepresentation of statistics, right? Again, mentioning, all these podcasts, this is the way that, you're not going to learn real estate in college. You're not going to learn real estate and generating passive wealth in high school. So we, as real estate investors and entrepreneurs, we lean heavily on podcasts, on real estate networking forums to educate us, right? And a lot of those storytelling out there is the 1%ers. It's these far-fetched, true, but unique and sparse opportunities that people were able to capitalize on them. I think that even in the last 12 years, it's even worse just because we were in such an upward trend that nobody failed, but yet we're showing all of these stories. And we don't say that they were saved by appreciation. It didn't hurt that in the Seattle market, it was increasing by double digits for 5 straight years or more. Like, that's great to tell, but it's not telling the other side of the story. It's not telling the full story. And so I like to come out there as a counter point and say, yeah, that did happen, but here's also the crappy things that happened. Here's the things that, here's the ways in which people could lose or did lose. Those don't sell books. Those don't sell headlines. And so I just think it's important to read between the lines and really understand what was at risk there, not just from financial perspective, right? A lot of women in particular, they'll get driven into the ground just from the sheer chaos and anxiety that we create for ourselves, trying to achieve these dreams and aspirations that we see on these podcasts, right? The lie to me personally, not anybody else, but the lie to me is you can have it all. I'm so tired of hearing all that. Lean into everything, lean into be a mom. Like, what if my mentality just can't handle it? What if just trying to create this abundance mindset isn't really pushing me there? Maybe I just need to recognize that I have some physical and psychological, limitations on my own, that this is not what defines or drives me. My real estate portfolio and the fact that I hit 1,000 doors isn't going to be imprinted upon my gravestone, right? Being a really great mom, maybe to help others in some form or fashion, that's going to be my legacy, not these stupid headlines that I hear. So I'm just trying to back into that. That's the biggest lie to me, was that I could do all this and run a business and feel like I can handle all this and not have any mom guilt. That's just not true. I have tons of it and I'm trying to mitigate it.
My God, yes. I mean, hashtag lean out.
Lie down. I want to lie down.
Beth and I were just talking about how we need to have an outward ban about thank you cards. What is that, Beth? Yeah, because we were talking about like all these things that just consume and overwhelm you, and I'm like, oh my God, yes. And so Beth suggested an overall ban for thank you cards in overall, and every parent should just sign these. And so I'm on board. I'm on less work, focus on the things that really matter. Yes, all of it to that, and focus less on the headlines. Do what just focus on things that matter to you. Okay, third question. Okay. Name someone that is doing something awesome that everyone should know.
Oh, goodness. So many people. I just did a recording with an investor. Her name is Heather Blankenship. If you don't know her, you should follow her. She's a real estate investor, mobile home park investor. She's got a podcast. She's doing a course. So she teaches people about how to do real estate investing, mobile home park investing. I think she's developing a course right now for 90 days to find your first property. And I think it's going to be free. I just saw that on her Instagram. So maybe people should follow her. I mean, she's pregnant with her 5th child. And so she's an influencer, she's an educator. She puts on women's retreats a couple times a year for those that are entrepreneurs and investors, and really kind of wraps everything into it. It's not just your professional aspirations and goals, but your, personal ones as well, and really being, covering the whole gamut.
I love it. Okay, well, besides your own book, name a book that significantly changed your career.
Oh, goodness. Yeah, well, I never thought that I would write a book, so that's definitely up there. I think that as I became an accidental entrepreneur and found myself running a business, I was at a complete loss. As I mentioned, I always wanted to do this as a side hustle. So I found myself trying to figure it out on my own, and I just really didn't know where to go. And so the book Scale, I believe by David Finkel, really helped me understand how to establish the foundation of my business and really turn it into a business with operational excellence, with systems and processes, with a governing body of values and overarching mission. Really helped me get out of the rut of, all of these things happening all at once. How do I get rid of that overwhelm and find the one single pain point that could help catapult us forward and achieve the lowest hanging fruit, so to speak? So the book Scale has been phenomenal.
Okay, what is one habit in your daily routine that's fundamentally changed who you are as a businesswoman?
Oh, recently, I don't know if this is a habit, but I, at the beginning of last year, I found myself kind of with this like existential crises. I'd had a couple of bad scenarios happen where people that I thought were really valued in my professional life just literally and figuratively walked out on me. And so I ended up reading some books like The Mountain Is You and The Subtle Art of Not Giving an F. But I got a tattoo on my forearm, and it says unapologetic with a period at the end of it. And I think transformationally, just establishing the habit of needing to put myself first and not feeling like I have to apologize for it, not feeling selfish by intention, but that it was just going to help preserve me and get back more of me, because I'd kind of lost my way. I'd had all this professional success, but I was just deeply unhappy and felt disappointed by the people in my life that I had expended so much time and energy on. But I had to take control and accountability for how I brought them in. And part of that was I did not value myself. I was valuing them first. That's on me, not them. They took advantage of an opportunity I quite frankly presented to them. So the new habit for me is being unapologetic. It's got a big fat period on the end of it, because it's just I'm unapologetic about everything. I'm unapologetic about telling you what I need. I'm unapologetic about establishing boundaries. I'm unapologetic about telling you no. And that was something that I needed to learn for myself.
I love that so much. Yeah. I love that, like, you said that you're pushing 50, right? And I'm like 35 right now. And I feel myself like heading to that place. Like I have to catch myself being like, oh, I'm unhappy because I'm partially responsible for allowing this weird energy into my life where like there's these demands and it's on me because I didn't say no, right? Because I have trouble saying no. And so that's a constant thing that I have to, pinch and remind myself of, like, oh, I deserve a break. This is my boundary. I'm not answering calls after 7:00. I will talk to you tomorrow morning. Like things like that, like little things like that will add up over time if you keep letting it happen. And then you don't know how you ended up there, where you're like, why am I so tired all the time? Why do I feel like I burned out? And it's because, I wasn't mindful and intentional about setting those boundaries and taking and practicing self-care, both emotionally, mentally, energy. Yeah. You're just protecting your energy. That's the biggest thing.
100%.
Yeah.
You'll find that the older you get, you have less and less energy. So what seemed sustainable to me back in my early 30s no longer is sustainable now. I just don't want or need it. But it started with me. I'm the one that decided to make 2 separate meals for my kids early on when they were younger and wouldn't eat the meal I had. And I was making dino nuggets on the side. Like, I allowed that to happen. I'm the one that let my team take vacations before I ever allowed myself to take a vacation. That's not their fault. That's mine. And so I just had to figure out a little bit, and you don't look. I'm very transparent about my journey in hopes that other people will learn from it and kind of, like I said, counterbalance some of these major, wildly successful stories out there. I am a twice divorced mother of 2 who really found herself in a business that she never planned on doing. It's not like I had the mindset for it. It's not like I planned for it, manifest destiny, all this stuff. No, it just landed in my lap. I got lucky, but then it stressed the living daylights out of me. I know I was working part-time for nearly a decade, raising my kids, and now all of a sudden I run a business and I'm not doing it very gracefully. I am the one that has to figure out how to manage my success and my anxiety at the same time. And my levels just happen to be higher than the average bear. I really do think it's like other people can reach these higher levels of success and travel around and not be stressed out. But I have mom guilt. I define myself by, what I do for my family and for me, not these professional accomplishments that I made. So this is all on me to figure out. But I'm going to share out there that, back when I was your age, I found myself in a very unhappy relationship trying to start all over again. And you don't do that successfully if you don't look inward a little bit. And I wasn't going to do this in vain. I'm not going to tear my family apart and not be happy and more successful after all of that is said and done.
That's so strong.
I want another podcast just on this topic because I have so many things as a new mom and constantly being rained by mom guilt. But yes. I need.
Real.
Yeah, it's so real.
No, it's like act 1, act 2, and act 3. You have your 20s, you have your 30s, and then you have your 40s, and you're reinventing yourself every decade. And I love that. I feel like that would resonate with a lot because a lot of our listeners are like in their 20s, 30s. And it's so nice to hear from like established professionals who are more secure in who they are. And I almost feel guilty saying this, but like, I do acknowledge I'm more secure in myself in my 30s than I was in my 20s. And I do put up with less shit in my 30s, but I do think there's room for improvement. And I'm excited to see in my 40s how much of like I don't take any shit from anybody. I'll be like, when I'm in my 40s,
my give a damn is totally busted.
Yeah.
And I do, like at the beginning of this year, I did a presentation for our local investor meetup, and it was all about like the anti-resolution clubs. I think that as entrepreneurs, as real estate investors, we're constantly saying like, what are these goals you're setting? Share it out into the world, put it out there, create this future. But I'm somebody who, like I said, divorced. Everything that I planned for myself in my 20s, I'm going to graduate from the University of Washington. I'm going to get engaged. I'm going to get married. I'm going to climb the corporate ladder. I'm going to have 2.5 babies. It didn't work. I was finding myself just before 40, starting all over again. Less net worth, broken family, single mom of 2. How the hell do I figure this all out? Right. And so I wanted to at least share with some of the 20s and 30 something that maybe you can over engineer your life. Maybe you can set all these artificial goals for yourself and put these milestones out there that actually don't mean anything to you. It's just what society prescribes, or it's what your parents tell you want to do, right? Like my mom was very impressionable in me, and I ended up trying to please her most in my 20s than myself. I really, this existential crisis I had last year is because I didn't spend any time in my 20s selfishly figuring out who I was and what I valued. And then I immediately was thrown into my 30s raising a family where I did not think about myself. So now I'm pushing 50 and I'm finally thinking about myself. I don't want other people to be that way, but it means that you have to really be centered in how you define success for yourself personally. And it's not just professional goals and milestones. It's what do you want familially and socially? What do you want interpersonally? How do you get a balance? All 3 of those things all at once. But we don't often set goals for ourselves on an interpersonal level, right? To create more peace in our life. That's not really like a goal I ever set before last year. It was just, I'm going to get to X, million in revenue, whatever that might be, or X number of doors. So I wanted to have a reset to say, okay, have we actually re-looked at what our value system is? Because it's not fame and fortune. That's not what most people value. It's not popularity. So I don't need to get to 20,000 followers. Who cares about that, right? I want peace in my life. That's a top value of mine. And I had to reset that. And I think for 20 somethings and 30 somethings, maybe they don't even set what their personal values are. They don't identify because they don't teach that in class. They don't really teach that in podcasts or, in bigger pockets. So what is that value system for yourself?
Yeah. And I almost feel like when you're in your 20s and 30s, you're like baby adults still. So it's you don't know what your value system is really. It's just like these ideas that people put in front of you. Like, oh, this is what you should like. But I think like in your 20s, when you have your first heartbreak or shit really hits the fan, you lose your first job. That's when like people hit almost like their own personal rock bottom and they reassess like, oh, it doesn't matter. Like all this weight that I put on these things, it's gone, but I didn't really I'm still alive and I'm still breathing. I'm still surviving. So how do I move forward from here, despite this temporary setback, right? That seems devastating in the moment, but yeah, I told everything of that totally resonates. So this is a great chat.
No, I gotta have a whole podcast just on this whole thing because I'm so yes, 100%. Well, thank you so much, Beth, for joining us. And if you are going to SARECon this summer, you will be catching her on the main stage, and so you're on Saturday, right, Beth?
Yes.
Okay, wonderful. Well, thank you so much for being here. Thank you for coming on.
And if our listeners want to find you, Beth, how can they best do that?
I'm on lendtolive.beth on Instagram, lend2live.beth. You can also reach out to me through my websites. There's flynnfamilylending.com or lendtolive.com, and you can access me that way.
Fabulous. Thanks so much, Beth. And let's continue this conversation in a future episode.
You bet. Absolutely.
Right. Thanks for listening. But before you go, we've got a quick Subtle Asian real estate update for you.
Hey, SARE Ladies listeners, have you heard about our upcoming Women's Summit? On July 25th and 26th, we are gathering in beautiful Costa Mesa, California, and you're invited. Imagine spending 2 days in a gorgeous house with fellow API female investors, diving deep into our personal development, leadership, and real estate strategies. This is your moment to shine, to learn, and to mastermind with the best. Don't miss this chance to connect, grow, and succeed together. Visit SareLadies.com to secure your spot today. Let's rise together, SARE Ladies. See you there.
The following is an important legal disclosure regarding the content of the SARE Ladies Podcast. Entertainment purposes only. The content provided in all episodes of the SARE Ladies Podcast, including discussions, opinions, interviews, and any other type of content, is intended solely for entertainment purposes. It should not be considered professional, financial, legal, or any other type of advice. No professional advice. The hosts, guests, and producers of the SARE Ladies Podcast are not professional advisors. The content provided should not be relied upon for making any personal, financial, or business decisions. We strongly encourage our listeners to seek advice from qualified professionals before making any decisions based on the content of this podcast. No liability. The creators, hosts, and producers of the SARE Ladies Podcast shall not be liable for any errors or omissions in the content provided, nor for any actions taken by any listener based on the information provided in the podcast. Any reliance you place on such information is therefore strictly at your own risk. No endorsement of investments. While we may discuss a range of topics, including investments and financial strategies, such discussions are for illustrative and entertainment purposes only. The SARE Ladies Podcast does not endorse or recommend any specific investments or financial products. Consult professionals. We strongly advise our listeners to consult with a qualified professional for advice tailored to their personal circumstances before making any investment or financial decisions. No association. There is no association between SARE Ladies and a guest speaker or professional. By listening to the SARE Ladies Podcast, you acknowledge and agree to this disclaimer and understand that the content provided is not intended to replace professional advice.
Now on to the show. Thank you for tuning in to the SARE Ladies Podcast, hosted by Anita Wong and Tiffany Lee.
If you enjoyed our show, please leave us a review or follow SARE Ladies on Spotify and Instagram. And also click on our show notes to subscribe to our newsletters to stay on top of our news and upcoming events. Until next time, Pod Squatters.